Fully fit to place, I can help.
Dealing with around 6 million incidents. Every year, the police receive over 8 million emergency calls from across the UK. Out to help are 122,000 frontline officers spread across 43 British forces. In the line of duty, the police come face to face with some of the UK's most violent and dangerous criminals.
I'm officer with a taser. What I need you to do is put the knife down for me.
Show me your hand! I've got a taser, show me your hand!
But with recorded crime rising at its fastest rate in a decade, cuts in funding are taking its toll on the force, not just in their ability to protect the public, but in protecting their own. In 2010, the government claimed that there was no need to maintain such a large force due to crime falling every year. Since then, the police have lost over 21,000 officers nationwide.
With less officers on the streets year on year and an increase in single-party patrols, the police are more vulnerable than ever. In 2018 alone, there are over 26,000 assaults on officers, 8,000 of which resulting in a serious injury. That's a 10% increase on the previous year.
Since the police reform, over 600 stations have closed in the UK, leaving towns vacant of reassurance and scarce of officers on the beat.
When I first joined, which was back in 2003, my first area was Chapeltown Beat, and it's now part of North East Leeds. North East Leeds covers about a third of Leeds. Chapeltown was half that size, the area. We would regularly turn out 24 as a minimum staffing. Now with double the size area, I think that probably sometimes when I was on shift we would struggle to turn out 8, and you'd arrive at jobs and the first thing you'd have to say is, I'm really sorry that we're so late.
The police have been forced to prioritise certain cases over others, meaning it can take days for them to respond to emergency calls. Yet, Theresa May states,
"What matters is not the total number of officers employed, but the total number of officers deployed and how effectively they are deployed."
£950 million was injected into the force at the beginning of 2019. Yet, funding is said to have been misleading, only covering basic rates of inflation and making minimal difference to the amount of frontline officers. Brian Booth, chairman of West Yorkshire Police Federation, believes that the public are still receiving inadequate police service.
I think people, when they call for the police, they don't get the service that they imagine they're going to get. Now, a lot of time, that isn't down to the individual officer. This is down to government policies, police leaders, and how they spend their budgets, how the government invests in policing. But like I've said, the public, when they ring up, I don't get an instant service. Why am I paying for police? They don't turn up when I need them. And I can tell you now, it's as frustrating for the officers as it is for the public.
In 2015, the head of the Police Federation spoke out, warning MPs that budget cuts were resulting in the police service being ineffective in doing their job. He said, "We are moving into an area where some crimes will not be investigated. We can't do everything. There are going to be situations where we simply can't deliver the policing we want to deliver. In those cases, we are failing the public." But what do the public think of this?
I think it's diabolical. I think there should be more police on the streets, just as a deterrent, if nothing else.
21,000 is too many.
And I think by having police on the streets, it gives the right image.
Well, I've seen a lot of officers on transport, but otherwise hardly on the streets at all.
There aren't enough police, there's not enough presence, but they don't have the authority either.
Now in 2019, the most recent Home Office statistics showed an 8% increase in offences using a knife or sharp instrument, a 14% rise in recorded homicides, 17% more robbery offences, and a 24% increase in public order offences, including antisocial behaviour. In reaction, the Police Federation stated that society isn't as safe as it once was, and while the police are doing everything in its power, we are swimming against the tide.
As society become more violent, more have police lost the streets, lost respect, I think officer numbers has had a significant impact on being present and maintaining our law and order within society. If you think criminals can go about their daily basis on the chance of coming across an officer is very slim, they may choose to do it more. The more they do it, the braver they get, the more challenging they become.
But Brian says that there's a more pressing issue at hand.
Officers single crewed are more likely to be assaulted. There is no evidence that that is the case, but having worked on the streets up until recently, I can tell you that is the case. When you walk in as a group of people, they may decide to have a go at a single officer where they won't, you know, where there's two or more there.
Hundreds of thousands of videos flood social media involving the police. While mobile videos can be a great source of evidence in police investigations, for some, it forces them to relive their own trauma. PC Susan Heaton was just 22 years old when she was assaulted. Her and another officer had been following a car in which they believed the driver had been drinking. Little did she know that when she pulled into the field after the car and followed the driver into a travellers camp, her life would never be the same.
So I went to try and call for some help again on my radio, and at that time we had the radios that had the lead and the brooch bit here, and the girl was fighting with me and she ripped the radio off and broke it off then, started strangling me with the lead of the radio. And I'm trying to push her off and she bit through my wrist. Then I managed to push her off a bit, and then one of the other men, it was a big bloke, he picked me up and he took me outside and he said, "You stay out here because we don't want to hurt you, but we're going to kill your colleague. We don't hurt women, but we're going to kill him."
The incident left Susan with post-traumatic stress disorder, but was not comfortable with telling her friends. She recalls the events 6 months later, which led to her colleagues finding out about her condition.
And then the car turned into a field, which was exactly what happened that night, so he's gone to go in the field after it with that. I've just started screaming and screaming and screaming. I couldn't breathe, and I'm just saying, "Get me out of this field, get me out of this field." But it's not only that. You kind of, during the time when I wasn't telling anybody, you kind of felt a bit sort of isolated from the team. You didn't know how to tell them. And it was kind of relief in the end when it came out like that, because then people did start acting a little bit differently to you. And I suppose really they probably knew.
Now there are charities and organisations set up to help officers in need of support. One of them is Mind. In an independent study, Mind found that 91% of police officers have experienced stress or poor mental health, and that while the emergency services are more likely to experience mental health problems than the general workforce, they are less likely to take time off. Yet working hard to prevent mental health problems impacting your work can come at a large personal cost, impacting relationships and physical health. But what are the police doing to support their own? For officers in the British Transport Police, their line manager is Assistant Chief Constable Sean O'Callaghan. With over 25 years of police experience, one of Sean's main responsibilities is overseeing officer welfare.
A lot of forces have adopted what they call the Officer Assault Pledge. So things like the facts that you refer to there is if an officer receives an injury of what we class as ABH, actual bodily harm or above, they will have the duty senior officer for the force. So in that case, that will be, as it is today, that is me for the whole country for a British Transport Police. If one of my officers were assaulted today, got an injury that doesn't require them to go to hospital, bruising, cuts, a significant injury rather than what should be part of their normal business, they would physically get a phone call from me, and actually I'd discuss their through, checking their welfare. Their line manager would be involved in any support, thinking further down the line for psychological support that they may need that wasn't there before. So that's the first bit there. But the wider piece is a different approach in response to how officers are now trained, what equipment they have, what protective stances that they can do. So again, a whole new thinking about thinking ahead to try and reduce some of those assaults. That's the approach that's been taken.
For now, the police appear to be at a crossroads with no clear direction as to what will happen in the future. With officer safety becoming more of a pressing issue and crime rates climbing year on year, the police are faced with more adversity than ever in their efforts to keep our streets safe. Susan became able to manage her post-traumatic stress disorder and was inspired by the help that she received to help others.
So I actually became a critical incident debrief, and I went out to Bosnia and Albania debriefing police officers who'd been working in the peacekeeping mission over there, because I felt that I had something to offer and I could really say, actually, you know, I might not know exactly how you feel, but I've got an idea what you're going through. So in a way, it made me look at things a lot differently to how I had been.
So, where do the police go from here?
What we need is proper sustainable, funding, where they look properly at how the demographics of each area is and how much money is needed to police properly, and not just throw pots of money. Throwing pots of money at the problem isn't the answer.
Just more, honestly, more police officers. I'm not somebody who thinks that we should all be armed, whether that be with guns or taser. I think that we're unique as a police force in the UK, and I'm proud of that, and I think that that's the way it should be.